Hi everybody, thank you so much for inviting me to speak at your conference. I did challenge, was I the right person to come and speak to you, because I lead end-of-life care services across 7 of the Manchester hospitals. But actually, it's about our story and being a big mouth, really, being a change agent, and the interaction that we have with every speciality, day in, day out. I know you all have the best job in the world, but mine's better. And my story's not actually been a very long one. It's been quite a short one over a very limited time in NHS terms. And the interaction with specialities is huge and engaging all of the time. And in the progress of the work that we've been changing in Manchester, and we have been really, really visionary in terms of end-of-life bereavement, organ and tissue donation. Something really important needs to be the message that's out there all the time. End-of-life care and bereavement is everybody's business. Doesn't matter where you work, doesn't matter what your job role is, doesn't matter how often you interact with end-of-life care patients and their families, because every interaction counts, and we've all got something to contribute. Death and dying is a really taboo subject. We don't want to talk about it. It's difficult. But the bottom line is, we're all the they. It's us. And every single one of us has been touched by a bereavement, a sudden unexpected death, an expected death that was prolonged. So, no, I'm not going to talk to you about tissue viability. I'm going to talk to you about the implementation of the SWAN model of nursing care that has come about following my Florence Nightingale Travel Scholarship, which I have to endorse, as Una has said, has been the most amazing opportunity. And yes, it was the worst interview, the worst one that I've ever had. But actually, the positives that it gave me have been unbelievable. So, why do I have a SWAN? Identifying all of our patients in the hospital and the community that are at end-of-life care. The SWAN actually in Roman times means happy death, and our aspiration is that actually our experience needs to be the best that it can possibly be. And we automatically assume that any death experience, irrespective of place or mode of death, expected or unexpected, is horrific. It's bad. But actually, do you know what? You can have a really good death. I had a beautiful brother, James, who had a really short diagnosis with MND. He was diagnosed in the November, and he went to Dignitas in the April, which was really tough for us as a family, because I do death really well. I do it really well. But he was really fiercely independent, and that was his choice. I have a best friend who's taken her own life. That was her choice. And although we don't advocate for suicide, for some people, that is their only option. I look after patients every day that are expected to die. And it's really important that we get it right. And that experience can be a good one when we can create really positive memories for those families and those people that are left behind. So the SWAN's an acronym. Is the person entering the dying phase of their life? If they are, we'll use the SWAN to identify that they're in that phase of life. I've already told you I absolutely believe end-of-life care is everybody's business. It doesn't matter if it's the porter, if it's the domestic on a ward, if it's the ward clerk, if it's the nursing team. We've all got something really important to contribute. By identifying the patient, by putting the SWAN sign up on their door curtain, If somebody's brought in suddenly and unexpectedly dead in an A&E department to identify we've got a dying patient, it does loads of things. It gives everybody permission to act and permission to break the rules that don't exist. Because we think there are loads of things we can't do around patients who are dead and dying. But actually, where does it say that? Where does it tell us we can't give a family a hot meal who are sat with their dying relative off the ward food trolley? That food is only going to be thrown away when it leaves the ward if it's not used. But actually, taking a hot meal to a family is the right thing to do. They might not want it, but you know what? They feel really cared for and valued. We tell them hospital parking is a massive issue. We give them a swan symbol to sit in the front of their dashboard on any of our hospitals so they don't have to pay for parking. It's not a stress. Nobody's going to challenge the fact they haven't had a parking ticket for the last 3 days. That seems such a simple, easy thing to do, but it's massively important for families who have to pay for parking for days. And it could be the ward clerk that gives those families the swan to go in their dashboard of their car. It's permission for the volunteers that work around the hospital to knock on the door and say, do you want a newspaper? Do you need a bar of chocolate? It's permission to break a set of rules. It's permission for families to stay 24 hours a day if that's what they want. It's really, really important, and it's a really good trigger to ensure that we sensitively communicate with our families and our patients. So conversations around DNA CPR. Do they really want to be dying in hospital? And what matters to them? What's really important to those people? It might be to bring a pet into hospital. That's fine. It might be that the husband and wife want their last cuddles together. That's fine. Just because you're in hospital doesn't mean to say we can't get in bed together. It enables the staff to step out of the box. But what it really, really does is enable all the generalists to become the specialists. Because as specialists, we're not that special. It's an empowering model of care. But it's really important that when we do enable and empower our teams that work with us, is to give them the tools to be able to deliver that care. And to identify the needs of the patient and of their family members, we need to equip everybody with everything that we need. An end-of-life care team in my area isn't specialist palliative care. It isn't specialist bereavement nurses. It is every porter, every healthcare assistant, every nurse, every clinician, every single person that works in an organisation, because that's really important, that we stop working in silos. And when we need extra support, we call upon the specialists for symptom control. But teaching and equipping people with the skills for emotional resilience is hugely important. Building relationships, it's been the catalyst, actually, for us to build huge relationships with colleagues that we'd never work with normally, that we think, what can you contribute? It's really, really important. I absolutely believe that the SWAN model of care that's in Manchester and also in 50 other organisations around the UK has been a real culture shift in us working in silos. I absolutely believe, because of the feedback from service users on how we make people feel, has been the pebble in the pond effect, and that ripple effect is spreading. My team are amazing. These are just some of them. But everybody that works in end-of-life care in my hospitals are all identified with a swan embroidered on their logo. So if anybody around the organisations or in the community see that swan logo, they know they can approach them and ask for help. So we always find out where patients are dying that might not be on the individualised plan of care. that might be on a surgical ward somewhere that wasn't identified. This is about every patient, every family, every time. Every main corridor of every hospital has an end-of-life care SWAN resource room. It's stored with alcohol. No, you don't need an alcohol licence, because you just might want your mouth care at end of life done with your favourite flavour. That mine would be Prosecco. So we need to ensure that we've got a selection of flavours. We often do deathbed weddings, and we can do those in an hour of somebody asking us to do that. Or Christmas in September. When you do Christmas in September, you have to ensure everybody on the ward around you hasn't suddenly got delirium or dementia because they can hear Christmas carols because we have a choir there. It's because Grandma, who's dying, actually was going to host Christmas at her house that year, but she wasn't going to make it. We can do birthday parties. We work in partnership with our local supermarkets. So when you have to go and do that first shop when somebody you love's died, there's a SWAN buddy that can take you around the aisles, that when you get to the cheese counter, there's somebody who just might help you. Z beds. Every ward area has access to beds so their relatives can stay. We never ask them to leave. And we work with National Girl Guide in UK. We are ambassadors for the Girl Guides because they make all our comfort packs for our relatives and patients that have no next of kin or have suddenly come into hospital, so that they can brush the teeth, face wipes, have a notebook and a pencil, and all the things that they need to make their stay in the hospital at that time the best that it can possibly be. None of the stuff that I'm telling you actually has cost us any money, because our communities have donated all this. And also we receive a lot of charitable money because families want to give us something back. So it's totally self-funding. We don't use horrible property bags to give relatives their next of kins precious, beautiful things back at end of life. We use a proper canvas bag with a swan on, and that serves two purposes. It becomes a memory bag for those family members. But as they're leaving our organisation, anybody who is in 8 feet of anybody carrying a swan bag knows to go up to them to say, "Are you okay? Do you know where you're going? Is there anything I can do to help?" It really is everybody's business. Okay. On the 23rd of May 2017, following the Manchester Arena bombing on the 22nd of May, my first phone call at 10 to 6 that morning was from my coroner in my area to say there'd been an incident in Manchester Arena following the Ariana Grande concert. I didn't even know who she was. We knew there were 19 patients dead that were in a very unstable roof. And the coroner said, "We need you." Don't know how or why, but we need you. Within my remit, I actually house the forensic mortuary. So as I'm driving into work that morning, rallying my troops of all my nurses, past and present, because I knew we'd need a few, my brain's thinking, what can we do? I've never been involved in a major incident before. I've looked after patients who've died by suicide, and I've looked after major trauma patients when there's been 5 or 6 in a road traffic collision. And they've died suddenly and unexpectedly. But this was a bit different. We knew the majority of relatives that were seeking their family members who were missing overnight needed a central place. So we liaised with the Etihad Man City Football Stadium, who agreed to be our housing location. All families through social media started to arrive at Manchester City Stadium by lunchtime on the Tuesday. Bearing in mind, the bomb had gone off at 10:30 on the 22nd. It was already a really long time. We arrived at the Etihad and there was myself, the coroner and Greater Manchester Police. It was a horrific tragedy. But actually, some really great work has come out as a result of that. 2 of the families couldn't be involved in identification and going to see their relatives because they were also injured. We made a decision on the 23rd that everything that we knew as a professional nursing team, we would tell every family as we knew that information. Because when I looked online to see the emotional response of families following previous disasters, a lot of those families didn't get to identify or see their relative for maybe up to 9 or 10 days. And we didn't want that in Manchester. It was really important that they got access to see their beautiful kids, partner, wives, as soon as possible. The forensic mortuary is really, really small, and actually it had been taken over by nearly 100 staff. So we knew we couldn't facilitate visits to the mortuary for those families in that area, so we transferred them to another mortuary. And for the first time in the history of nursing, bereavement nurses supported those families in the initial visit so their relatives could be seen, not behind a glass screen, not behind a window, on a proper hospital bed with a proper pillow and a lovely duvet of their favourite colour. We'd house nurses in the hotel where all these families were staying, so we could get some really great personal information for these relatives about their deceased loved one. And we could get pyjamas and nighties or a Myra Carey t-shirt or whatever they wanted. The families would arrive with their police family liaison officer at the mortuary, and they would be given the legality that none of our deceased victims have been formally identified. But would you like to go in to see them, as we are 99.9% sure this is your relative? Because of the information they'd given us about tattoos, rings, or maybe we'd found a driving licence. But we had to air caution on driving licences, because young girls particularly borrow their big sister's driving licence so they can get into a venue. And a lot of the girls that went looked the same. They looked like my daughter, long dark hair, drawn on eyebrows. So families were given the information and we took them in. 20 of our 22 families went in to lie next to, see the wounds of, smell, kiss and touch their relatives. All of them had lip kisses, handprints, locks of hair. We played their favourite music. We washed their hair with the shampoo that they used at home. And it was the most magnificent experience of my life. And I find that hard to tell you that because it was such a tragic, tragic situation. But actually, we enabled those families to step into their tomorrows. And as a nurse, I'm proud of that. It was brilliant because we worked collaboratively. It was teamwork. It made us even more resilient because we were there with our police colleagues who'd give us a big hug. We'd sit and eat pizza on the floor between each family visit. And it was certainly, amazingly special. And we worked in a really different way, which has subsequently led on to bereavement nurses being based with Greater Manchester Police and the coroners in our area. So every time there is a sudden unexpected death, a murder, a suicide, those families are afforded that same level of care. It was tough as a professional to look after 22 people on the bounce. But actually, the reason that it wasn't difficult was because our practice for years had been to care for families in the acute hospital setting and the community setting, like a district nurse would care for an end-of-life care patient. It's just what we did. So yes, it was really consolidated, but actually it wasn't tough because we knew what to do. Family feedback had always been that families who could have freedom to do what they want at the end of somebody's life absolutely reduces hospital complaints across our patch by 47%, because it enhances the way we feel and helps us to create memories. We took every single one of those families when they were ready back to the Manchester Arena to show them exactly where their relative had died. And that was really helpful for them to be able to sit and reflect quietly on their experience. We're still in touch with every family. And last year, for somebody who's really, really not fit, we cycled 22 miles for 22 days in memory. My legs still aren't working properly now. But it's really, really special because the percentage of those families who've had to go on to formal support is really, really different, because we were unable to tell them their new normal. And yeah, this is awful, but it's normal for you to feel like this. We only have one chance of any patient or family whose lives we touch in whatever professional capacity that we do to get it right. We have one chance to create some memories, and that doesn't have to be from a dedicated bereavement service. That can be from every single professional that goes in and touches that family life. I'm sorry if I've sent you into shock. But do you know what? It's really, really special and important for us to be able to share our story. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think everyone's been touched. I can see most people have been touched by that emotional, excellent presentation. Are there any questions after that?
I'd just like to say I think you're one of the angels. You are, and you should be very proud of yourself.
I'm proud of us, because it's us that make this stuff happen by stepping out of our silos. Thank you.
Thank you.